Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The topic of my brief lecture today, I hope is very brief, is national security challenges ahead. The greatest challenge is right here in this room. The fact that we are faced with a grave threat of COVID-19, or I think COVID-21 perhaps. But I am really heartened by the fact that all of you could make it to the function despite this unknown peril which is upon us. I'm not a doctor or a scientist. I can only hope and pray that your near and dear ones and you all who have braved and come here will be well and safe. I've been asked to speak on national security challenges ahead. I'll just talk about two aspects, because national security is such a huge subject, starting from Pakistan, ISI, China. But since I'm a student of security, I will just touch upon briefly on two aspects and try to be as brief as possible. The first aspect which I think needs to be resolved is the India-China boundary. Not many months ago, we've had the problem of Galwan in eastern Ladakh. And you saw how it created such a furor in the entire country. And I know for a fact, having visited China in 2002 and being a member of the Track to Dialogue with China in 2014, that they used the vulnerability of our times, because we were suffering from COVID-19 last year also, the lockdowns, severe protocols, etc., to intrude into our territory, which was rightfully ours. But our brave soldiers and officers of the Indian Armed Forces rose to the occasion and evicted them. Last Sunday there was an interview of mine in the Assam Tribune where I was asked by the executive editor whether it was an honorable truce for India. So I said, well, it cannot be an honor because we just were able to retrieve what was rightfully ours. The case rests at that. But let me come closer to home. You see, the 4,056 kilometer long boundary between India and China, all the way from Ladakh to Myanmar, west to east, is a huge boundary. And those of you, and I'm sure all of you know this, China has not solved its boundary problem only with two countries, India and Bhutan. They have solved it with Russia, with a very interesting principle called the Thalweg principle, in the midstream of the river Ussuri. But for us, with us, they want to keep the problem alive for some reason or the other. There are three sectors, as you would know: the western sector where the eastern Ladakh thing happened, central sector, and the eastern sector, which actually has a bearing upon us, people who are from Assam. And why, some of you might ask? Because I will take you back to 1962 when I was not born, but some of you were perhaps there, when the Prime Minister's heart went out to the people of Assam. And the PLA, the Chinese army, had come all the way to Misamari, to the foothills. They could have, for some reason or other, after Pandit Nehru's famous, or I should say infamous speech that my heart goes out to the people of Assam, they could have crossed the Brahmaputra and they could have come to Guwahati, Shillong. They could have come to India Club, and we would not be conferring in this language that I'm talking now, but perhaps in Mandarin. But gratefully that was not so. I confess that I am a student of security. I am only 10% of what the India-China relationship is all about, despite the fact that I've been in Track to Dialogue with them. But I know one thing, ladies and gentlemen, that the 4,056 kilometer long boundary cannot be solved in one fell swoop. It's not possible. So when I was chosen for the Track to Dialogue in 2014 by the NSA, I made some preparatory things because I had already traversed the entire eastern sector, except the glaciated ones like Gorichen. I'd gone to the Kamang sector, I'd gone to the Walong sector, I'd gone to Menchuka, etc. Despite the fact that I have a broken leg, which again, because I went to an Indian Army battalion and fell from the, while doing slavery. But despite that, I thought it's important for you to understand and see before you write or talk. So before the track to dialogue, I realized that comprehensive resolution of the entire boundary is not possible. Let's look at something subsector or sector-wise. So during my visits, I realized that there is one place in the Kamang sector which lends itself to such a resolution. They're sitting on Thangla Ridge, and we are on the southern bank of the Namkachu. I've been there physically. Wanted to walk, I wanted to go by jeep for about a day from Tawang, and then you'd walk. My legs so look like a balloon, but despite that, I think it's important to see before you talk. I'm reminded of a film called MacArthur, the Second World War general, the 5-star general. And I refer to him because of an anecdotal aspect which simply struck me at this point of time. During the Second World War, he was traveling in a jeep and he was going, and one of the lieutenants stopped. "Sir, don't go any further. 100 meters there, the Japanese are there. They're shooting at us." So you know what MacArthur said in an open jeep? "Son, if you can't see him, you can't fight him." Not that I got any solace or inspiration from that movie which I saw about a decade ago. But the fact of the matter is, and there are very important journalists here who I know actually travel. Parthodev Goswami, who got the award for journalism, is a war correspondent. He's been to Mao, Udhampur. He's gone on a submarine. So what I'm trying to tell you is that in the Kamang sector, there is a small subsector. When the Chinese came all the way to Misamari, they could have stayed on there. They could have stayed on in Rupa or Tenga. They could have stayed in Bombdila. They could have stayed on in Tawang, which reportedly they covet. But why did they go right back to Thagla? Because it is an elevated position. And some of your police officers here, they were supposed to be armed forces officers, but because of the situation, they cannot come. But the police officers know that the elevated position in any war or battle is very important. But it's very interesting because I've been to operations rooms of very important corps and divisions in this area. And I've asked this question of generals. Why did they go back when they could have stayed on? This, especially because they're now coveting the 90,000 square kilometer here in Arunachal Pradesh. So I did not get any answer. So what I did for the track 2 was, I said the subsector resolution is the only answer. So let the line of actual control in that sector be named as line of amity, awaiting another decade or so of negotiation before it becomes an international boundary. As a matter of fact, the late Neville Maxwell, who passed away last year, and I used to have a lot of debate about this over email. And he said, Jaideep, it's a great idea, despite the fact he's very anti-India, pro-China. He said, let's not call it the line of amity, let's call it the Modi-Ji line. You have to start somewhere. And those of you who think that I'm talking technically, let me give you an analogy from our own lives. For instance, I stay in Beltola, in a 3-bedroom apartment, small apartment. And being not a very moneyed man, I can't refurbish my, house in one go. It needs a coat of paint. So what do? Should I sit tight? No. With whatever money I'm able to gather, I will first refurbish and give a fresh coat of paint to the room in which I entertain my guests. That is the sitting room or the drawing room. I start somewhere. Similarly, if you superimpose that analogy onto the line of amity concept that I'm talking about, makes sense. You start somewhere. Let there be less belligerence, less of rhetoric. The line of actual control, the name itself sounds so belligerent. The line of amity will give some kind of encouragement to the next new generation, perhaps then things will get resolved. I think the India-China boundary is one of the greatest national security challenges. And I've told you about Assam and his involvement in Northeast. So that is the only thing I'm talking about as far as one of the aspects. The second aspect, which is very closer to home and closer to some of the people sitting around listening to me today, is radicalization. Unfortunately, I cannot help but take a few communal aspects by way of, refer to certain communal aspects. I'm not a communal man, I'm not a political man, nor am I a religious man in that sense. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that radicalization is growing by leaps and bounds in this region is a truism. The global Salafi Islamist movement world over might be quietened at this point of time because Islamic State of Iraq and Syria lost territory in Syria and Iraq. But the fact of the matter is, it has not disappeared. We saw in 2016, 2017 and 18, particularly in Bangladesh, which abuts us so closely, so much of disturbances. Hostage situation in that artisan bakery in Gulshan, where they actually said that they were affiliated to the ISIS, Islamic State, or Daesh. Suicide bombings, bombers, women with infants in the lab, killing themselves. It was quieted because of the immense pressure which Sheikh Hasina got to bear upon these people. But I tell you what, since we abut them closely, the DGP is sitting here, the Principal Secretary at Home is sitting here, the Head of Intelligence is sitting here. Fact of the matter is, there is a spillover effect because of the pressure there. They come here, but they don't activate this region. The Burdwan blast was an accidental one, ladies and gentlemen, as a result of which an alert Assam police and an alert special branch was able to nab JMB cadres in Barpeta. And it was to an extent nipped in the bud. I congratulate them. But the fact of the matter is, at this point of time, because of the pressure in Bangladesh, things have quietened, but not disappeared. They've come out in a different form. When I was doing my advanced research in the United States, I learned about one thing when I was doing my research, that there's a timeline. Timeline in the sense, you see there's a time for war and there's a time for peace. And there's a time for uneasy peace. So Islamist agenda at this point of time, and I make a distinction between Islamic and Islamist. I don't, in fact, in my book, Terrorism and Conflict Expert, have never used the word jihad, because that is a misnomer. So Islamist agenda at the moment is quieting down. How? They have actually raised groups like the Hifazat-e-Islam Bangladesh, Islami Andolan Bangladesh, these overgrown groups. They have actually dishonored our Honorable Prime Minister when our Honorable Prime Minister visited Bangladesh on 25th March last to celebrate their Bangladesh's independence. They're asking for blasphemy laws. They're asking for the non-erection of any statue which they consider to be un-Islamic. Why am I saying that this is a national security? Because we in Northeast, we in the lower districts of Assam are a gateway to the rest of India, which they are actually interested in. If you think that 26/11 Mumbai took place only because of Lashkar-e-Toiba, you are wrong. My research tells me that there were Bangladeshi elements hand in hand. We could keep talking about LET getting command and control information all the way from Murid K in Lahore, but that's not all. I'm sure our agencies know that. I'm a mere student of security, but the fact of the matter is, the Islamists are not interested in Bongaigaons or Guwahatis or things like that at this point of time. They're interested in Hyderabad, Jaipur, Varanasi, Delhi, Mumbai, where, as you know, if you look at the timeline, blasts have happened consecutively year after year. But I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't want to be a prophet of doom, exactly a year from now, you'll see some sort of an imitation of what's happening in Bangladesh or going to happen in Bangladesh in the land of Bhupen Hazarika. I'm worried about that, particularly because I think the non-existence of an anti-terror policy in India is a bit of an issue which I am really concerned about. We don't have an anti-terror policy. We are still moving ahead with an animal called de-radicalization. but that de-radicalization doesn't exist. How do you know what's happening in the brain of a person? A radicalized person. I stay in Beltola, so tomorrow if I'm radicalized, should I go up to the Bokhisto police station and say, well, I'm radicalized, arrest me? Nobody will do that. I can never find out who is radicalized among this crowd. So the entire process of de-radicalization is wrong. What do? You counter-radicalize. You stop him from getting radicalized before he gets into this whole method. Incidentally, people don't get radicalized because they read the Holy Quran. Some people are there out in the open who have deviant minds. I'm not a doctor or a scientist. Dr. Tribeni Forma is here. She knows better about dura mater and medulla oblongata. But there are warrior genes inside the brain which impel people to do action. There are people who get up in the morning, but instead of actually going for a bath and praying to Lord Surya, for no rhyme or reason, kicks the dog. So there are people. And there are people, I would say 10% of the population of the world are like that. Deviant mind. And they saw a psychological sanctuary in the call of the caliphate, the new caliphate, by Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. They said, well, we are not deviant. The people beheading there, the massacre murders are happening there, and it is sanctioned. It is sanctioned by the Quran, which is misinterpreted by the Quran. Because after all, there are two strains, or two or what? Many strains in Islam with different interpretation. Thankfully, we in India, and Assam particularly, we are a very moderate lot. I've had the good fortune of having talked to people like Abu Bakr Siddiqui. Natsa will know better. In 2002, Harkatul Mujahideen Assam Unit General Secretary. He said we went to Bhakra saying POK, but we were asked to assassinate BJP leaders, etc. And we came back disenchanted because of Assamese Muslims are not like the Islamists of the South, of the other kind. So the gateway theory, the counter-radicalization aspects, and the non-existence of anti-terror doctrine for India makes up what I feel are the important challenges for the time. As I said, there are many other challenges.